And I'm trying to save the biggest trailer for last, so though it does tie into Marvel. So I'm going to go a little to the left, even though that's the wrong way, the left. And I'm going to say the trailer we saw, it's a little bit of an extended trailer than the one we saw at the end of X. We got the trailer for Pearl, the sequel to X. I'm a little bit more excited for this movie than I was for the original X movie, you know? Because I'm like, we get to see the history of the character of Pearl in this movie. And though it seems like it's one of those movies where basically we know the whole story through the trailer, you know, but I'm kind of a little more excited because I'll admit it's more of a traditional slasher film, but at least we're going into the origins and it looks a little bloodier and old school again. And after her surprising performance in X, I'm happy to see Mia Goth, you know, be more like as a lead, you know, and, you know, even with a Southern accent, knowing that she is European, you know, so I'm kind of happy she's coming into her own. And, you know, no, I'm not going to make it personal. I mean, she's married to another actor who's kind of not working. So it's like, I'm happy somebody's bringing in the money. So what are your feelings on the Pearl trailer?
Pretty much the same as yours. And I would probably say that I'm definitely getting the vibes of Fear Street now, going from a present day story to now we're going into the past. And then I believe this is going to be a trilogy, so it'll follow up from X. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting to see how that story developed into the events of X.
I just say, can we please bring back, again, I'm bad with names this week, the woman who starred in Pitch Perfect and played in X and had a nude scene?
Oh, Brittany Snow?
Yes, can we somehow like have her have an identical twin cousin who's seeking revenge for the murders or something? Because I feel like the third is going to be a sequel. Yeah. So I'm hoping in Pearl maybe we'll get the ties, but we already know of the main character who's the final girl in X has her past too. You know, so somehow I feel like that's going to tie in. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm excited for this. Is becoming like more interesting. It's sort of like how M. Night Shyamalan gave us, you know, Split, where we think, oh, this is just going to be a one-off, and then he tied it into his other previous film, and then the next film was a sequel. I'm hoping it just keeps getting more exciting as it goes along. Other than that, we also got the trailer for Blonde, the Marilyn Monroe biopic, directed by Andrew Dominic and starring Ana de Armas. And I'm glad we saw the trailer because finally she does have the voice down. I was a little worried that since she has an accent that it wouldn't sound natural or would take you out instantly. Like she's not Marilyn, but she looks damn near almost exactly like her. And my favorite love-hate relationship with Bobby Cannavale. I'll admit it's only a trailer, but he sounds very theatrical when he speaks. And you would think playing Joe DiMaggio, it would be a little more natural for him in the way that he does speak in real life. But other than that, I'm looking forward to this because I am probably part of the handful of people who actually like killing them softly. So I love anytime Andrew Dominic comes out with a new film. And, you know, I'm looking forward to this because he can make a mundane subject exciting. Because look at the assassination of Jesse James, you know. So, I mean, he to me is like Terrence Malick, but can stick to the story, you know. There's not a bunch of nature shots for no reason, even though I love Terrence Malick. So I'm looking forward to this. What did you think of the Blonde trailer?
Yeah, I thought it looked good. She definitely now looks a lot like Marilyn Monroe in her prime, down to the voice, down to the overall look when they try to put her into her old movies. And I love the cinematography going back and forth between the black and white and sort of that old early color age of cinema, and looks way better than Deep Water. That's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah, because this will probably, if it does have sex scenes that make sense. But also, I will say, even though none of them look like her, I will recommend for people who like Marilyn Monroe and biofilms about her, check out Norma Jean and Marilyn with Mira Sorvino and Ashley Judd. It is a very good story and shows the two sides of Marilyn Monroe and her mentality. I'm hoping, obviously, this is probably going to be a little bit better because, it's more theatrical, but I'm really looking forward to this. And finally, in trailers, we come to the most emotional of trailers, but also part of the Marvel Universe. And finally, they released the Wakanda Forever trailer. Now, they still haven't shown who's going to be Black Panther in the end. We know Black Panther eventually makes an appearance in this film. And we know Namor, Submariner, is the villain. And this is the film that there's rumored Doctor Doom might be introduced. And, not as a major villain, but his character at least. I will admit, I have watched the trailer many times. And it is a very emotional trailer because it kind of gives a tribute to Chadwick Boseman, but also shows we're trying to continue the story, and it's a story of loss. And, I mean, I even love the soundtrack to the trailer with No Woman, No Cry, and then it cuts into All Right by Kendrick Lamar. So much so that I even listened to that trailer's music on SoundCloud. I'm looking forward to it. It's still in the air who's going to take over. And you have a very emotional Angela Bassett giving the speech about losing her family in this film. You see Lupita Nyong'o. You see Winston Duke. So, most everybody's back for this. And I am looking forward to this movie. I'm their opening day either way. But I know we discussed it a little, and you have a little trepidation when it comes to this film.
Yeah, so it looks gorgeous. It's going to make a lot of money. It's going to make an impact. And I hope it will rise above a lot of the issues it's had in production, with Letitia Wright and all the other stuff that's going on. So I definitely don't see this failing. But for me personally, it just didn't feel right without just having T'Challa present. I feel if you were going to do this story, whether Chadwick Boseman was alive or not, you should save this later on down the line. And just the fact that it's already a movie where you're building out the rest of this world, but you're void of the hero, and you're already trying to take a supporting character and try to do everything possible to elevate that character into being the next hero. I think it's just way too soon. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a smooth transition. And quite honestly, I'm in the camp that feels the roles should have been recast respectively. You've done this with other characters in the MCU, and I know the film was such a cultural relevant picture that, put Marvel in a whole different plane than just making superhero movies. But seriously, Chadwick Boseman is more than just one person. And like any superhero that we've seen on screen, any actor can come in and still make an impact and just get used to their performance and still pay tribute to the people that came before, as we've seen with any actor coming after Christopher Reeve with Superman. You're going to do like a Superman movie without Superman because Christopher Reeve is dead? No. There's plenty of good talent out there that could easily fit into the role, pay tribute to Chadwick, and you continue on. That's the thing that's bothering me about this picture. And coming off of, a phase of Marvel that's been kind of mediocre, I'm just going into this with a lot of trepidation. And like I said, I do think it's going to do fine. Like I said, Coogler makes it look good. But personally, I know I just have that ugly feeling in my stomach that I just don't know if I'm going to love this.
Well, I mean, Marvel, sort of like DC with Ezra Miller, was put in a tight spot. And I know that when they first thought about, making Wakanda Forever after Chadwick Boseman, there was a huge fan backlash against recasting the role. And that might have scared them off into, well, let's acknowledge, his passing and maybe accelerate whatever their idea is. If it's going to be Letitia Wright, like it is in the comic books, or maybe, there's rumors Winston Duke's character is going to take over, or we might be introduced to somebody totally different, a character we've never met who takes over the mantle because of Letitia Wright's problems socially.
There's still the rumor of Killmonger coming back, and they've been very mum about Michael B. Jordan, whether he's in it or not.
Well, Michael B. Jordan likes coming back to stuff, so you never know. So I'm hoping all the best. I want it to be a success. It's my favorite of all the Marvel movies. So that's why I'm even probably going to get a Wakanda Forever tattoo. I wanted to get one after Black Panther, so it's not just, the trailer's out, let me go get a tattoo for it, advertisement. So, that's how much of an impact that first movie had on me. I watched it like 3 times in theaters. So I love that film. That's the only movie other than maybe Captain America that I saw multiple times in theaters. And it wasn't the first Captain America. It was the sequel, the one I can't think of the name of. So, I'm really looking forward to that. Unfortunately now, and speaking of those who have passed, we have to go through the list of the many actors and superstars who have passed since our last show. Let's start off with Lenny Von Dolen. Now, he's not the biggest name who people might know, but he starred in one of my favorite 1980s movies, Electric Dreams, where he accidentally spills a soda on a computer and basically invents AI. And it's a romantic comedy of sorts with Bud Cort as the voice of the computer and Virginia Madsen as his love interest. And I've always loved that film because he always had an interesting look. He was like Jeff Goldblum. He was kind of gawky, tall, skinny, but he had these piercing blue eyes in the face of a leading man. Now, of course, he ended up becoming more of a character actor, noted in movies like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, as well as the series playing Laura Palmer's psychiatrist, who she was also sleeping with. Spoiler if you haven't seen Twin Peaks. It's been out for how many years? And if you haven't seen it by now, come on. He was also, he was a working actor. He was the villain in Home Alone 3, for those of you keeping score. The first one without Macaulay Culkin. And he was also in the movie Teeth, about the teenage girl who had teeth in her vagina. He played her stepfather in that movie. So, he's one of those actors who I always remembered. And, obviously as they get older, they don't work as much, but he was always a joy to see on screen. I don't know, are you familiar with Lenny Von Dolen's work?
Unfortunately not, and I haven't seen Electric Dreams. I've heard about it over the years, but it's one of those movies on my list I still need to get around. It's a sad one.
So rest in peace, Lenny Von Dolen. We also have another popular character actor who mainly played mobsters died, Tony Sirico. I hope I'm saying his last name right. Who most of you probably remember as Paulie Walnuts on The Sopranos, if you watch The Sopranos. He always had an unmistakable mane of hair that never moved. But he also was in my favorite gangster film, Goodfellas, in a small role. And he always did play gangsters, but also cops, because he also was in the movie Copland. He was in a lot of Woody Allen movies, surprisingly, as either mobsters, cops, or boxing trainers. He was in Deconstructing Harry. I was shocked to find out he was in Dead Presidents, and I don't remember him in that movie. That is one of those unofficial, I love movies. I can see its problems, but I love that movie to death. He also played mobsters in, I'm sure, Andre's favorite film, Innocent Blood, by John Landis, with Don Rickles, of all people. He was in Romeo is Bleeding, a future deep dive, if anything, because I love that movie. And he was in James Toback's The Pickup Artist with Robert Downey Jr. and Molly Ringwald and Harvey Keitel. So he was, he might have played stereotypes, but he was always a welcome force. And, he could play drama, even though something inherently about him made you laugh because he was just naturally funny and charismatic, and he's just one of those guys like the guy who plays Big Pussy on Sopranos. One of those guys you always see, you always think is going to be in these types of movies. And when they pass, it's just like, oh, man, who's going to be our next generation of mobster characters? Like if Joe Mantegna wasn't playing Fat Tony, Tony Sirico totally could have played it as voice acting. Are you familiar with Tony Sirico's work?
Yeah, I'm familiar with him on The Sopranos. I remember seeing him in there was a commercial he used to do in the 2000s. I think it was like for Verizon, where he was.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, he was playing like the same character, and we're just all the mobster actors that we used to love. We're losing them one by one, and it's crazy. It's happening within the succession of 2 months.
No offense. It's not really offending you. I only saw him maybe being in one of your films, So, because he has that kind of character actor background that I know, like in a lot of your films and a lot of your actors have. And so it's like, I'm sad that you never got to work with him. And next up, we have director Bob Rafelson, who passed away. I know of Bob Rafelson more than I've actually seen his work. Like, I never saw King of Marvin's Gardens, unfortunately. And some of the movies I've seen some of the lesser works. I saw Blood and Wine with Jack Nicholson. One film I love that he did do, I'm not going to say love, but I thought he did not do badly with. I saw the remake of The Postman Always Rings twice with Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange. It's different than the original, but it's still as compelling as the original. And of course, he was the creator of The Monkees. He primarily seemed to work with Jack Nicholson, though he did also make the thriller Black Widow, which I really remember from the 80s. My mother was a fan of that movie with Teresa Russell. I guess he's just one of those legends. He's sort of like Hal Ashby, but outlived everybody. He's just one of those guys whose films you appreciate so much more for their nuances. And again, you're like, this is the guy who made The Monkees of all films. And he produced a lot of legendary films like Easy Rider, unfortunately, a lot of people will remember him for the flop that was Man Trouble with Jack Nicholson and Ellen Barkin, the one that plays the most on cable, strangely,
Michael McKean is a villain.
See, I haven't even seen it, so I did not even know that. I just know Jack Nicholson stars as a dog trainer. That's all I know about the movie. And is Ellen Barkin a singer in that movie?
I don't remember.
See, it's like, and of course, his true classic with Jack Nicholson, I can't remember the name of.
5 Easy Pieces.
I unfortunately have never seen that movie.
It's a very good film, and definitely a sentimental or quintessential Jack Nicholson film.
See, like how you with Lenny Von Dolan, that's me with Bob Rafelson. I've heard of him. I've heard of his movies. I haven't seen enough of them. And I definitely want to see 5 Easy Pieces as soon as possible. So a rest in peace to Bob Rafelson. As we're going through character mobster actors, unfortunately, Paul Sorvino, the father of Mira Sorvino, passed away this week. And I'm like, the quintessential New York background actor, Paul Sorvino, who was only nominated for an Oscar once for Goodfellas for Best Supporting Actor. I mean, come on. You have The Cooler with him. I mean, you have him all the way back to like 60s and 70s with like Cry Uncle with Alan Garfield and Slow Dancing in New York, directed by John G. Avildsen, where he played the lead as kind of a Jimmy Breslin type reporter. And I think one of the few times he was actually a lead in a film.
Yep.
you know, I mean, you name it, you remember. He has the funniest line in Money Talks. You know, you mean he's full million? You know, I'm sorry. It's a racist joke, but it's freaking hilarious the way he delivers it. And I'm not trying to insult the man. His performance in Knockoff as the villain is the stuff of legends. You know? And that's all I'm going to say about his performance in that movie. You know, I just love how he kept one wardrobe throughout. That's all I'm going to say. And, okay, come on, guys. If you haven't seen Knockoff by now, really, his death scene is just like, really? That's all I'm going to say about that. But, I mean, he was in Repo, the Genetic Opera, where he sung, because he could actually sing opera. He was in The Stuff, one of my favorite Larry Cohen movies. He was even in Bernie Mac's Mr. 3000, where ironically he has no lines until the end.
He was basically Joe Torre.
Pretty much, but he was memorable in the film. I totally forgot he was in Romeo and Juliet. You know, not the biggest role, but he was in it. And he was in Nixon as Henry Kissinger. It's like, if you're a movie fan, you have seen Paul Sorvino in something, you know? And so it's a big, big loss, Paul Sorvino. I think, you know, again, another New York classic actor gone, who I don't think we'll ever see that type anymore. And now we have the long career of, this one hurt, Mr. David Warner. And if he isn't a sir, he should be. You know, best performance of his career for me, Time After Time.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that movie, and ever since I saw that movie as a child, I always would pay attention if David Warner was in a movie, even in Waxwork. You know, primarily played villains. You know, I mean, I was shocked to see him in Straw Dogs and not play the villain, though the person who people hunt down nonetheless. I mean, I didn't see Marjo, which was, you know, one of his first big lead roles, but I did see Time Bandits, another movie I love. I might be in the cult camp on this. Supergirl, and you know, who wasn't in Twin Peaks apparently. He was even in David Lynch's other series that was not as favorably received, Wild Poems. He played really a cameo in Scream 2, where I feel like that was the Wes Craven role, where it's like, I'm going to explain all this exposition of drama, but also add me to the list of suspects, you know.
And we're forgetting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, where he's not.
I was saving the best for the end. Look, I don't know why he took the role, but other than Vanilla Ice, he's one of the most memorable parts of the movie, which is more successful than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze, it was a little more tongue-in-cheek than the first film. It didn't need to have as much heart. So, you know, him being in that film, look, I have no problems with Secret of the Ooze. No, so I'm not going to speak bad about the man for the roles he took. He was in Body Bags with John Carpenter, and in the Stacy Keach segment about the hair, you know. So I'm just like, he was also the voice of Ra's al Ghul on Batman the Animated Series. And again, another one of Andre's favorite movies that we just talked about. He was in Money Talks too.
That's right. Yeah, he was a newscaster.
Exactly. It's like this man was willing to take any role. He was even willing to work with a young Brett Ratner. So, or maybe it's Brett Ratner who's knocking off all these older actors. Hey, Paul Sorvino. But we still have Chris Tucker. He was also in a great Steve Martin movie, The Man with Two Brains. And so he showed his versatility. And, I mean, he was in The Omen. I think, was he the character who got decapitated?
Yes. Yeah. I think he got stabbed with the spike.
Yeah, and then truck decapitates him. One of the most memorable death scenes of me in movie history for me.
Yeah.
He was also in The Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter. You know, truly a cult classic, which I saw in theaters. The Company of Wolves, one of Neil Jordan's first movies. But unfortunately, I feel like most people will remember him for being in one of the biggest box office hits of all time, Titanic. You know, it's sort of like, hey, Orson Welles made Citizen Kane, but most people remember him from that wine and peas commercial. You know, it's like, really, we're just going to reduce that whole career to that. So, you know, I mean, it was an Oscar winner, but, you know, he was so much more than that role. And a very tall man. And maybe Will Poulter will be the next David Warner. Who knows? You know, do you have anything to say about the passing of David Warner?
I think you said it all. He was definitely a legendary character actor, played amazing villains, played, you know, some scene-stealing side characters. Again, another major loss in the business.
And finally, we come to Mr. James Caan, who we talked about last month in our Bulletproof review. If there was anybody who personified the Bronx, you know, classic Bronx, it would be James Caan, who played villains. He played an action hero in Rollerball. You know, he played a drama, The Gambler. You know, he played Italian. He played Jewish. You know, he played everything, the gamut, and he never slowed down, no matter what. You know, he's another one who did not get along with David O. Russell. You know, but I remember the most shocking movie he was ever in was Manderley with Nicole Kidman. Because I guess when you think of European art directors, you don't think, you know who they're dying to work with? James Caan, you know. But, you know, James Caan, Thief, you know, great movie, great performance. You know, Godfather, obviously. The Gambler, you know. He's just another New York classic actor who had a little more prestige because he could actually play the bigger lead roles. What do you have to say about the passing of James Caan?
Yeah, another, like, maybe the biggest loss out of all of them. And my earliest memories of James Caan go back to Misery, because my parents rented that, watched it. That was really like his comeback role after kind of a lull in the 80s. Honeymoon in Vegas being another one, kind of playing up the mob thing, but doing it in a comedic fashion. And then there was like a period where all of a sudden he started working again, like he was the bad guy in Eraser, the bad guy in Bulletproof, which we just discussed. And he was like constantly working. Then he had the show Las Vegas, and that kind of, you know, gave him some stability for a while. But out of all the movies he ever did, you know, with Godfather and The Rain People and Rollerball, and you mentioned The Gambler, Thief is one of my all-time favorites. I highlight, like, anybody that's like big into like mobster movies or Scarface or anything like that, I say go watch Thief, because that film, his performance, he's definitely a dead ringer for Michael Mann as his avatar in that picture, being this guy who's this master safecracker and trying to get out of business, but gets pulled back into it. It's a wonderful performance. It's beautifully shot, the Tangerine Dream music, and it is just, it's fucking awesome. I highly recommend anybody ever see that in his entire filmography. And I know it's his favorite movie of all time. So yeah, that was that's definitely one of the biggest losses we've had this year, because he was an icon for that age. Like him, Burt Reynolds, Ryan O'Neal, Stallone. Like, you had those men of action that were kind of coming up in that period, and you know, now we're losing them one by one, and it's just it's a sad shame.
I wish him and Burt Reynolds had did a movie together. That would have been awesome.
Like The Longest Yard or something like that.
Exactly. One of my favorite later career.
And we forget about Brian's song. That's the one that everybody has seen at least once in their life and teared up.
I haven't. I haven't brung myself to watch that,
Mhm.
and now it's going to be even more harder now.
Oh yeah. 40s and his 80s, man. You got to hold on to him.
One of my favorite of his later career roles, other than Detachment, where he actually played one of the more sensitive teachers, was I might be in the solo camp of loving this movie, The Way of the Gun. I loved him in that film. You know, that was like one of his quintessential performances, just like Thief. And I mean, even in his last years, he was popular on Twitter just because he would write something and then just put end of tweet.
Yeah.
So, you know, he always stayed relevant. And recently I watched a movie, one of his earliest films, Lady in a Cage, where he plays the villain. And, oh, man, is he just so menacing in that film. And a lover of showing his chest hair, you know, back then, I noticed. So I'm just like, so, yes, James Caan, a great loss. You know, a great character actor. Was other than like Godfather, was he ever Oscar nominated?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because maybe the only thing I could think of is The Gambler that he might have been Oscar nominated for. So, hey, tell us in the comments, please, because you know we're not always experts. And that thankfully ends our rest in peace segment. And now we move on to what you all come here for, unless you're watching the little snippets, the reviews. And we have a whopping 6 this week. So let's start with a film that maybe came out earlier this year. I think you might have seen this in theaters. I did not. I saw it at home. Michael Bay's Ambulance, which is a remake of a Danish film. And I remember strangely rooting for this movie because I was like, Michael Bay's making a comeback. He'll show those motherfuckers when they kick him out of Bad Boys directing. Yeah. I cannot say this was the Michael Bay Renaissance movie I was expecting. This movie, which Jake Gyllenhaal obviously is enjoying, it's being in, was a disappointment. You know, it put me in the camp of the Michael Bay naysayers because it just felt unnecessary and messy. You know, I'm like, hey, the drone shots were great at first. I don't need half this movie to be drone shots. We get it. You know, Garrett Dillahunt is obviously the Michael Bay surrogate as the FBI officer who kind of gets taken out randomly. Spoilers. And then, you know, we have, he was, I think, the SWAT team, the head of the FBI or in charge of this case, who strangely has a history with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. And we're introduced to him during his marriage therapy. And our first introduction to him is that he's gay, you know. And I was just like, the subtlety of Michael Bay as always. You know, again, the only actor who seems to be trying here seems to be Yaha. Every other actor in this just seems like they're trying to be in a drama, but it's playing off more like a comedy. You know, like, I still don't know exactly Jake Gyllenhaal's entire history of his character, you know? And I'm like, so he's on the FBI list, but none of you tracked him before this at all. And the nicest thing I can say about this film, nice to see A. Martinez working. And you know what? Did we put him in the list of Cobra Kai Miguel's fathers?
I think we did.
Okay, because I'm like, this is convincing me more. He can do it. And, you know, this could be an A. Martino's renaissance coming back. I'm for it, you know. Other than that, I mean, Isa Gonzalez, she looks good. That seemed to be most of her character, other than I'm hard bitten because this happened, you know. And I'm just like, I remember thinking throughout the whole film, how is this going to end? You know, not because I want it to be over, but I know Yaha's gonna have to somehow get away with all this, but how? So there's nothing subtle about this movie. You've seen this movie before. If you're a Michael Bay diehard, go to see it. But I didn't think he could get as bad or distasteful for me personally. I didn't like The Island. But, I thought maybe Pain and Gain might have been the bottom. This one has reached a new bottom. And I love me some Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie. And I'm like with this movie, like, this is like Prince of Persia, Jake Gyllenhaal. What did you think of The Ambulance as somebody who saw it in a theater?
I don't have too much to say other than, to be nice, it's better than Underground 6 or 6 Underground, whatever the hell it was called. It was repetitive. It was all over the place. Yeah, there's supposed to be like some sort of like unbiological brother relationship between Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Mateen that drives the emotional arc of the story, but I didn't really care for that. It just was like a reason for them to be even working together. The ending, they tried to inject this reality to it that was unnecessary and stupid. And the only other thing I could say that's good is maybe the camera work, and which is really what I think the whole movie is based around, is like him using all these drone shots with the car chasing. And yeah, it looks nice, it's exciting, but I don't care for the story. And that's the big problem with a number of Michael Bay's movies, is that there's a lot of flashiness, there's a lot of like impressive camera work, but where's the story? Where's the connection I'm supposed to have with these characters? And when you don't have that, the movie itself falls apart.
And my other question, why does every character try to be like Bruce Willis in Die Hard with the wisecracking? I'm like, we're all in these serious situations and everybody has a one-liner to go. And again, I guess even the most emotional relationship to me in this film, other than Yaha playing John Q in this movie, the action version, was the cop and his partner. And this guy is so dedicated to his partner. I felt like I was watching an episode of The Rookie. I'm just like, I wanted to like this movie. It is a quintessential Los Angeles film. The scenery and all the drone shots and everything in the neighborhoods, and then having the rapper Wale in a comedic role. But like you said, you come out of it and you feel nothing, And, Bay, if you're trying to make a comeback, you got to give me something a little bit better, where I care. I mean, I know that might be a problem a little for you with stories, but maybe, find a new screenwriter or a different screenwriter. But that is our review of Ambulance. I take it we're both not recommending this movie. And so, Yaha, you had Candyman this year, so go with that, because that's the better of the two. And we didn't necessarily love that movie either. And so that shows you the level of how disappointing this movie is. Next, a film we all know you're on the edge of your seats waiting for this review. Senior Year with Rebel Wilson. She stars in a kind of 13 going on 30 film where she's a popular teenager who has an accident and then ends up in a coma and wakes up at the age of 30, and she still wants to be popular because she still has that teenage mentality. So she goes back to school and, tries to get her high school degree, and then ends up becoming more akin with the nerds of the school, and her old rival is now the mother of her rival, and she's more rivaling with the mother, and her old high school boyfriend is also the rival's husband. It's okay. It's nothing to write home about. It's a Netflix movie, so it probably is better off going on streaming. And this is the first film with Rebel Wilson after she has lost all of the weight. So we really get to find out what is so charismatic and comedic about Rebel Wilson. And really, she does a lot of heavy hauling through this movie because she's the one thing that seems to work in this film, her character. I mean, the other characters are funny. Sam Richardson as the guy who always had a crush on her. the nice guy. And their scene when they're trying to make her ex jealous in the movie theater is the most memorable comedic scene to me throughout this whole film. And I also liked, the whole diverseness of, the nerds and how they're trying to be, kind of, I guess, woke, but even they make fun of that fact. So I liked that aspect of the movie. And I like anytime Chris Parnell's in a movie playing her father. And you had Anjani Rice playing the younger version of her, who some of you might remember as supporting in the Spider-Man movies, but who I will always remember from The Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Like I said, it's a satisfying movie. It's a cute little romantic comedy. It's funny. It's not that offensive. Other than that, the only thing I really remember are her trades with her rival when they're trying to one-up each other. Their comedic banter, I remember. But, I'd recommend it. It's a nice time waster. If you ain't got nothing else to watch, give it a try. Andre, what did you think of Senior Year?
It was a cute movie. Rebel Wilson makes it work. And it kind of reminded me of like a reverse 13 going on 30, where, instead of her like going fast forwarding in time and trying to relive the 80s again, it's like now it's this girl from the early 2000s, like around period of when I graduated from high school, now in today's times trying to still get it on as the popular girl in the school. So, it has its cliches, it has its moments, but, it's an upbeat film. But I had two problems with it.
Okay.
The best friend, I thought he was gay.
Sam Richardson's character?
Yeah, because you see him as a high school kid where clearly I can't imagine like a straight kid with colored hair like that, looking all funky and sounding like a gay man being, like straight and interested in her and then grow up, be straight and still have a thing for her like that. I didn't really see that correlation until like midway through the movie. Oh, he's actually straight and he has a crush on her. So that was a little weird to me. I mean, I guess that's just the times we're in these days. Maybe he's just a hipster, and we weren't saying it was a hipster back in those days.
Well, that could be a thing of casting too. Whoever they cast as the younger version too.
Yeah, but you could have gotten like Winston Duke or somebody like that, and you would have been able to say that the guy's straight.
Is Winston Duke the go-to replacement for everybody? Like, hey, this guy's not working out. Winston Duke.
And then the other issue, so you have the kid who played Ben in Stephen King's It.
Okay.
He has no lines. Like, he's in the background. The kid had a big part in this last movie. Now he's playing a background role. What the hell is that all about?
Maybe they held this movie up for a while. Who knows?
No, he looks the same age as he did when he did that. I mean, he looks older. So I don't get it. Like, why would you cast this kid?
Maybe his part was cut down, or he's not, or his agent isn't working hard enough.
Yeah, I think his agent's failing him.
Well, I didn't get that from Sam Richardson, though. The way you're speaking, maybe that was Rebel Wilson's character's thinking too. Like, hey, he's got colored hair, and he never seems to hit on any girl, so maybe he is gay.
Hey, wearing tight jeans and funky tight outfits. I'm thinking the guy is just like her gay best friend.
Well, she couldn't have two gay best friends. It ends up her female best friend is gay too. And that actress, I always confused for Sarah Paulson.
Well, I only remember her from that show Blunt Talk with Patrick Stewart.
She was also in that Kristen Stewart lesbian film, Christmas movie. I don't remember the title of it. Like Season's Greetings. And for the life of me, I was like, Sarah Paulson's really good in this. And I saw the credits and I'm like, oh, that's not Sarah Paulson. My bad. Glad I did not put that in a review. Like, oh, Sarah Paulson excellent in this movie.
Well, that's like what I saw Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore. I was watching it on a plane going to San Francisco. And I thought the blonde girl was Heather Graham. Later finding out it was Marley Shelton.
I'm sure Heather Graham's like, thank you for thinking I look so youthful. That I saw in a theater. Never Been Kissed. Oh, no, I knew it was Marley Shelton. Love me some Marley Shelton and Jessica Alba. you know. But anyway, but would you recommend Senior Year?
Yeah, I recommend it.
I recommend it. Again, if you're a fan of Never Been Kissed 13 Going on 30, you'll like this.
Yeah.
And this is a lot better than Rebel Wilson's previous movies other than Pitch Perfect, and which lives up to its title for me, except for part 3. So next on the, that is our review of Senior Year. Next on the list is a movie I was 50-50 on watching in the first place. Kind of glad I did. The Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, which is about a romance writer who is also kind of a historian. And she ends up getting kidnapped by this billionaire heir, Daniel Radcliffe doing his best Succession acting in this. And Channing Tatum's Hunk character is so in love with her that he goes after her with his mentor, who he met at a yoga retreat, played by Brad Pitt, who is, I will say, one of the best things in this movie, playing, the typical Brad Pitt heroic type. And also her publisher goes after her. And it's kind of a romancing the stone, except, Channing Tatum's character is kind of, I guess, the typical comedic Channing Tatum character, a blundering idiot romantic. But it somehow works, I don't see him being a romance cover model, but, that's the only, fault I find in the casting of the movie. But I liked it. I liked Daniel Radcliffe as the villain in this movie. He was giving off better Jesse Eisenberg vibes. I think even though they don't give her enough to do, I love Divine Joy Randolph as her publisher, who I believe was in Dolomite Is My Name, where she was memorable in that movie. And I didn't love the Patty Harrison character who plays her assistant. I just felt like that was comedic background that really didn't need to be there. But other than that, spoiler alert, my favorite little bit of inside joke casting, Stephen Lang as the villain in her when she's writing the book.
Yeah.
Who else is an iconic villain that has just managed to stay working over the years, other than Stephen Lang? And I will admit, I always have a soft spot for Sandra Bullock movies. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't see it in a theater. I saw it like how you saw Never Been Kissed on a plane. And it kept me thoroughly entertained through the ride. What did you think of The Lost City?
I was halfway entertained on it. I knew going in it was going to be like a rip-off / reboot of Romancing the Stone. It's basically the same exact plot. And, Bullock and Tatum are good for what their roles call for. The age difference, though, does kind of bother me. I thought that was a little weird.
Really?
That
I barely noticed it.
You have a woman that's pushing 60, hitting on a guy that just turned 40.
Damn! Yeah, but she doesn't look like she's pushing 60. You act like she's Estelle Getty.
Well, you never
doesn't
know.
look that old.
I mean, we're in the age of having Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, so that's the world we're living in today. I like Daniel Radcliffe. The Brad Pitt thing was funny, and I knew where that was going right away when I saw the trailer. I didn't care for the mystery or finding the lost city and the whole thing, how it ties in with the book and all that. I was like, yeah. I think the only thing I could really say about this film watching it is I am so happy Channing Tatum never made that Gambit movie, because if he was intending to make it something like this, it would have bombed like a motherfucker.
It would have been another Wolverine, the first one.
Yeah.
Look, I surprisingly like Channing Tatum. When he's good, he's really good in more comedic roles. And I could see him trying to attempt that here, but I don't think he had the writing behind it to really own a truly comedic character. Because like you said, it's more of a generic character. We've seen him play and we've seen other people play before. And you just kicking Sandra Bullock down the stairs practically.
She's
Apparently,
a woman,
Don,
but I'm just saying, like.
apparently Don Cheadle should have played her love interest since he's 60. You know, I'm like, Jesus, God forbid you have a younger love it. So what? Was Jon Favreau supposed to show up and be like, hey, I'm your love interest. You're 60. You got to settle for what you can get here.
Well, yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard, I mean, they're close enough in age. I would believe her as a book publisher.
But my thing is, but is Bryce Dallas Howard a big enough name? Because, I mean, Sandra Bullock's name helped sell this movie, her stardom.
Hey, she was in Jurassic World. She sells tickets.
But that's the only thing most people know her for. Nobody's like, I love Bryce Dallas Howard in 50-50. Or when she played Elton John's mother. Yeah. You know, I'm not trying to diss her as an actress. I love Bryce Dallas Howard. But I just don't see her starring in The Lost City. I'm like, if I was a studio executive and you were like, hey, we have Sandra Bullock, Bryce Dallas Howard, who should star? I'm going with Bullock, even though apparently she's ancient for some people. I'm just like,
should have been made in the 2000s with Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore. Then we would have accepted it because at least they were like actually together.
I'm surprised that script wasn't sitting around for them. I would have accepted it more in the 90s. I think it would have been more of a hit if it had been in the 90s. But I'm just like, wow, this Sandra Bullock critique. Like, wow.
If it was in the 90s, then it would have been Romancing the Stone 3. Which they tried to do, and they couldn't get it off the ground.
Hey, I wouldn't mind them passing it off to a new generation, you know. But, you know, because the only difference being, you know, the hero is more of an idiot this time.
Yeah.
And not action inclined. You know what this movie missed? Danny DeVito type character.
Yeah. And the closest was the guy who plays Oscar on The Office, but that was like a couple.
He always has these weird roles in Sandra Bullock because he was the same way in The Proposal. You know, it's just like, huh? Why are you here? I mean, he's not bad, but it's just like, that's one of those curious plot elements. I don't know if this makes enough money in their sequel. Maybe Daniel Radcliffe will be the Danny DeVito type role. Hey, I'm all for Daniel Radcliffe star. Come on, he's Weird Al. He's Harry Potter, and surprisingly, I've liked him in a lot of his other roles, like Guns Akimbo, you know, and one where he goes undercover in a far right community.
Yeah, he was like a cop.
Yeah, I mean, a little short, but you know, I am a fan of the short actors. Look. You know how much I love Michael J. Fox. And though strangely never played a cop.
Hardway, I think, was the closest.
Well, yeah, but he was undercover.
A movie star trying to be a cop, yeah.
Exactly. Yet they let him play a fireman on Rescue Me.
Yeah, but they played up his Parkinson's disease. That doesn't...
Well, I mean, come on. Any role he takes, unfortunately now, you really have to play it up, except for his cameo in that Netflix movie where he played a science teacher, which was about time.
Michael J. Fox when he was like in his prime, not when he tried to make us sad while showing he still had strength.
Hey, I'm just happy he's getting his official Oscar finally next year. And he more than deserves it.
Yeah.
You know, even if the most dramatic he's ever been is Casualties of War and Light of Day. Which I still like.
Big city where you have to do cocaine.
Have you seen the movie? No.
Yeah, I watched it late at night.
Is it? But would you really sit there and be like, you know what? He should have been Oscar nominated for this.
The monologue he has in Swootsy Kurtz's apartment before he starts trying to make out with her, that's bravery.
Yeah, and that's also probably from the book. So it's like, hey, he came up with that on the set. But yes, like I said, I love Michael J. Fox, even though he's not in the movie we were just reviewing. Though in the 90s, he would have made an interesting choice being in this film. They probably would have made him the villain, though. And
I don't know. I don't think America would have accepted Michael J. Fox as a bad guy.
Well, he was still a box office champ at that time. So, but if they were still in the packaging movies, like we have this star, and then Michael J. Fox is the villain. It could have worked. And I'm just saying, hey, Robert Duvall was in Hustle. That's all I'm saying here.
Yeah, but he plays anything.
Hey, it gave that film oddly some prestige, even though it ended up being a good film. Okay, so the next movie we're talking about is a movie that everybody had very high hopes for, and we'll see how it goes. The Gray Man, directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. It's adapted from a novel. It stars Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Billy Bob Thornton. That was a shock. And Alfre Woodard and Rajay Jean Page, who a lot of the ladies love from Bridgerton. And it also has Bollywood superstar Dhanush, and I believe is how you say his name, has Jessica Henwick from Matrix, the last Matrix movie. And for some odd reason, Shea Wingham in a very brief cameo role as young Ryan Gosling's father. I'm going to let you take over the major part or the beginning of reviewing this movie.
So that's one of the issues I have with this movie. I don't know what it's about. All I know is Ryan Gosling gets recruited, I think, by the CIA or some agency where he's like an assassin. He kills this guy that might or might not be his brother, and he takes this object from him, and the people that hired him want the object. So they send Chris Evans, who's like this other like psycho sociopath, who goes after him to retrieve it, and all this other hell breaks loose. They have a contract. So it's sort of like they're trying to do like a big budget John Wick with the Russo brothers at the helm. There's some really good action, you know,
Yes.
with that scene on the airplane when he's flying out, and that whole fight scene on there, and some of the stuff like the fight scene with Chris Evans at the end, and also when he's trying to escape being drowned by the dude from Narcos. So there's like that, but I don't know what this movie was about. I just know there's a lot of crisscrossing, and Ana de Armas helps Ryan Gosling, but they're not really romantically involved. They're just colleagues, and she turns on the group. I don't know what's happening. I'm just seeing a lot of action and a lot of big name faces, but what the hell is this movie all about? And why do they think it's justified enough to have a sequel and a prequel?
Because it costs $220 million. That's why there's too much of an investment. It's sort of like those Divergent movies where it's like, it's a popular book series. First movie's a hit, but we're going to okay the whole series, even though it has a very low score of audience actually liking it. The Gray Man. It costs $220 million. You can tell because, again, like you said, it's incoherent in the plot. Great action sequences, but if ever a movie needed a John Woo directing it, it's this movie.
Yeah. And
this is bad for Joe and Anthony Russo because before this, Cherry was their previous movie, and that was also not that great. You know, this to me is like an average big budget action film, but with the talent involved, it should be so much better. Okay, like you said, one of the main problems is I know they're spies or whatever, so everything's close to the chest, but I got nobody's motivation throughout this whole film. Everybody's motivation keeps changing, and so except for Ryan Gosling because he's the hero. You know, like he has this devotion to Billy Bob Thornton because he saved him, and then for some odd reason, even though he's this top, 6 agent, protect my niece. It's like, like instead of the field, he needs to protect your niece, who he bonds with over records, And of course, she has a disability or a terminal illness. And then, like you said, Ana de Armas switches sides because, I don't know, she remembers him from Blade Runner 2099. It's like, that's never explained. And then we know that he's doing underground black box work, but we never know why Raj whatever is like willing to wants all this program wiped out when it seems like, even though he's not a part of it, Chris Evans might as well have been part of that program too. And okay, Ryan Gosling is in jail, but we never see any of his training that he knows how to get out of almost ever, where he becomes MacGyver throughout action with a gun, MacGyver, throughout the whole film, which is never explained. And I mean, I know this is a petty excuse, but also, even though they're working for the government, they kill so many innocent bystanders and bombings, shootings in the streets and all that, that you're telling me this was all kept secret under a hat with all of this happening? It's just like, come on. I know it's a movie, but come on. And you know what you're getting when Chris Evans has a mustache in a movie. You know he's in full villain mode.
Yeah, he's got the Patrick Bergen mustache.
Exactly, and almost a box haircut with the colorful wardrobe. So it's just like, and I'll admit, the first time I watched it, the action became so mundane. I fell asleep the first time I watched it and woke up at the end, and I had to rewatch it all over again. And I was still as confused by the end, like, huh, wait, why did this wait, what? And I mean, you're going to make a prequel, so I never sat here through the whole film was wondering, where did Chris Evans' character come from? You know? It feels like an Army of the Dead, where it's like, we've made so much of an investment, we have to make a prequel and a sequel, if for no reason.
And I also feel like, does Ryan Gosling have more than one facial expression? I mean, I know the guy's talented, he's done good things, but it seems like every second he's looking like he did in Drive and Blade Runner, where he just has like that straightforward, deadpan look, like, you know, let the ladies come and love me and let me look at my pecs and my abs. But this guy has other range. Why are you only playing him as one note?
Now, my question, do you think that was a film choice, or do you think that was a choice for him in performance? And
I think it was a choice by the directors to make it sell. And just let, you know, with Chris Evans, who's played so many goody two-shoes roles like Captain America, like, oh yeah, no, go to town. We want you to be like as bad as you can be, you know, and Ryan Gosling is just being Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, because I felt like with Ryan Gosling here, I felt like he was pulling a Bruce Willis, you know. I felt like he was trying to, you know, kind of be wisecracky, but dangerous, but still kind of the everyday Joe, like, hey, you know, like, I mean, you know, he doesn't use his Canadian Brooklyn accent as much in this film. But I also felt like he's like, this is a studio film. I'll do what you tell me to do. I'm not putting in any background. Or again, it might be like how we were saying about the film. Maybe he didn't understand his motivation either. He's like, okay, whatever you tell me to do in this scene, I'll do it. You know, I mean, yeah, he's sexy in this film, but it's like, it's Ryan Gosling. That's what he does. But like you said, he's been known to show range before, but this felt like more of a, you know, I've got kids and a family. It's a paycheck role, you know, sort of like the Barbie movie he's starring in. It seems like it's more for him. Again, we haven't seen the movie, but it just seems like he's making more paycheck roles and, you know, I mean, when he wants to be, you know, deep down and dramatic, I think he will be. But for now, I think he's just having fun.
But like when he did The Nice Guys, he looked like he was having fun in that. Here, it's just generic, one-dimensional good guy that Seagal or Stallone could have played in their day.
And the bottom line is that I want to like Joe and Anthony Russo since they came from independent beginnings, and I liked Welcome to Collinwood. But my thing is, it just felt like the talent involved were all above this. Yeah. And that was the other major disappointment. If you're going to spend $220 million on this, like everybody should have been on their A game here, from script, you know, to motivation. And it just felt like this was like almost like an afterthought movie where it's like, we'll just put all these guys in it and then just, you know, whatever shape the script is in, we'll just play it. In other words, it felt like a typical big budget Netflix movie. Yeah. And this is why they're getting that stigma of these type of films where it's like in development. I mean, studios aren't known for their like breaking down of scripts, but I think Netflix needs to pay a little attention more to that than just okaying it because we have a bunch of stars or a big name director attached. And I wanted to like this movie. That's the worst part, you know? I like the cast. I mean, I love Alfre Woodard. I love Billy Bob Thornton, who seems to be getting thinner. with each new movie. I really wanted to like it. Chris Evans, I mean, is memorable, but, I like Chris Evans subtle, like Knives Out Chris Evans, not blatant overacting Chris Evans, who gets all the best lines, Like, maybe it should have been a switch of characters. Like, maybe Chris Evans should have played the lead, and Ryan Gosling should have played more the villain. Then again, it would be interesting to see Ryan Gosling with a mustache. So, would you recommend The Gray Man?
Yeah, why not? It's a time waster.
Okay, my other question: do you think you would, if it hadn't been on Netflix, would you have paid to see it?
Well, I'm probably gonna go pay to see Bullet Train, so yeah, I would have paid to see it.
Okay, well, I'm hoping Bullet Train's a lot better than this. I would recommend it with reservations. I'm like, if you just want a generic action film, go for it. If you ladies just want to see Ryan Gosling or Chris Evans or Rajay, go for it. But other than that, if you're looking for quality, skip it. One last thing. Again, I want to say the most, out of all the action people in this movie, again, the Bollywood star Dhanush is the most interesting character because he's just so badass. And then at the end, you find out, oh, I'm a moral character. So it's just like, what? Like, it seemed like you were accepting any job before. Now you're like, oh, all of a sudden, I'm all about morals. You have to have moral character for me to work for you. So this just felt like Netflix's version of The Bourne Identity, except with no memory loss. So, like I said, I think there's potential there. Maybe they'll make it a little bit better with the sequel, sort of like how Army of the Dead, you had that other movie with the safecracker character that was more a heist comedy more than anything and very loosely tied into Army of the Dead. So I'm hoping maybe the sequel or prequel will be more like that, but we'll see. Next, we have a movie you were very enthusiastic about, but I was on the fence about at first. The Black Phone, starring Scott Derrickson's favorite actor, Ethan Hawke. But it also has Jeremy Davies in it from Lost, and not who I thought it was, E. Roger Mitchell, who I thought was the guy from Unlawful Entry. Because I'm like watching the movie like, when's he coming in? And then I realized, oh no, that's the other black older character actor who usually plays cops, who plays the lead detective in this one.
And he looks like one of my actor friends way too much.
And it has James Ransone. It's another actor who works a lot with Scott Derrickson. It's based on a short story by Joe Hill. And I have to say, your instincts were right, because I ended up loving this movie. I usually don't like movies where kids are murdered or in peril. So it reminded me of the movie we watched a few weeks back, which was The Boy Behind the Door. It had those vibes, but what I enjoyed about this film is that it more felt like a film of its time period that it's set in, the 1970s. And even though we have all these adults in it, it majorly stays with the teen and kid cast, and it deals with like feelings of Catholicism. Some of the things in it felt a little cliche. The alcoholic father who doesn't want the girl using her psychic gifts, and Jeremy Davies in a mullet and over-emoting, But it did manage to have a lot of surprises that I didn't expect. I will admit, I jumped twice during this movie, and I have to give it up to the child cast. They were all amazing in this film. Especially his friend, I don't remember the character's name, the one who stuck up for him against the bullies. I really wanted to see more of his character throughout the film. Fortunately, he's not in the film that much. But also, I was surprised at how brutal this movie is for the kid character. Like, even the fight scene in the schoolyard, I'm like, damn. And, like, they punched the girl in the face. I'm like, this movie, man. I'm like, wow. And what was the other thing? Oh, when one of the characters goes into flashback and he's playing pinball and somebody bumps him and he like not only wails on this other character, but this kid pulls out a knife out of nowhere. I'm like, what's with the kids in this town? And you're like, this is the most violent town I've ever seen with teenagers. And the adults act like, yeah, it's typical. It's that, but other than that, I love this movie. I mean, Ethan Hawke rarely does wrong these days. But I found it interesting that his character is more supporting, you know, not really the lead character. He's not like the monster ghoul who's throughout this film. And I like that we don't really get any explanation as to why he does this. You know, spoiler alert, sorry, I forgot to say that at the beginning. But yes, this film just is truly fascinating. And I like this film a lot more than their previous film. I can't remember, with Ethan Hawke as the star.
Yeah, I'm trying to blank on it.
Yes, I'm sure plenty of people. Was it Sinister?
It might have been Sinister.
Yeah, that I'm sure people will correct us. But I enjoyed this a lot more than this. And if this is what happens when you have creative differences over Doctor Strange 2, please, more independent directors, please leave Marvel and make more originals, because we need more movies like this. Because this is way better than Doctor Strange 2. How did you feel about The Black Phone?
Yeah, I enjoyed it tremendously. The whole 1970s vibe, the kids, you know, again, it has its cliches with the alcoholic father. I like the creepiness of it. You know, again, I thought Ethan Hawke was going to have a bigger part, but it actually was more focused on the kid being trapped and constantly going on the phone. And you're thinking maybe there's other kids in this house that are talking to him. It later turns out, spoilers, they're all dead and they're giving him this advice. So it was kind of giving me Stephen King vibes. And I kind of knew it was going to sort of build up where they were all going to kind of help him at the end to defeat Ethan Hawke. And that's like, I mean, it's just brilliantly done. It's very psychological. And in some spots, it doesn't go the way you expect. And it's just, I think it's Scott Derrickson's best film.
I agree. And he was the one who convinced me to like Doctor Strange. You know, not a character I love, but he made that movie all the more alluring. Special mention again has to go to James Ransone. I'm not going to say his role here, but it's comedic and surprising. Yeah. And he's probably the comic relief, if you could call that, in this movie of all of this. And finally, that is our review. Wait. Before we say, we both obviously highly recommend this movie.
Yes.
Okay. So now we move on to our final review. I know some of you who are sitting through this are like, finally, shit. We are going to review Thor, Love and Thunder. And I'll let you take lead on this one.
So Thor, Love and Thunder, I'll try to be as concise as I can. So it's, a couple of years after the events of Avengers Endgame, where Thor is running around the galaxy with the Guardians, and he's still kind of getting over all the grief he's been having since that movie, you know, with the loss of Loki, the loss of his mother and father, the loss of Asgard, which now it's New Asgard and Earth. He's dropped the belly weight and the beer belly and all that from that movie, so now he's back in peak Thor shape. And while this is all going on, you have Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher, who is out killing gods all across the galaxy, goes to New Asgard to try to take out Valkyrie and other Norse gods that are still existing. At the same time, we have Natalie Portman coming back as Jane Foster, who we haven't seen since Thor the Dark World, and she is dying from cancer. And in a last attempt to try to save her life, she's reading up on all the Norse god mythologies and goes to New Asgard, finds the destroyed Thor hammer, and the hammer not only comes back into form, but it turns her into Mighty Thor, not Lady Thor, Mighty Thor. So she and Thor team up to take out Gore the God Butcher, and they have to save a bunch of children that have been captured by Gore, one of which is Idris Elba's Heimdall's son. And so that's really the movie in a nutshell. And what I'll say is this: I think personally, I had a good time watching it. It was fun. It was feel good. It has its sad moments, and generally, I think kids in general will like the movie like they would like any other Marvel film. So I give it a pass on that. However, this is Taika Waititi, and he's dialing up the comedy from Ragnarok to 11. And that's a big problem with this picture is the sharp turns between the comedy of Thor, which I know is what got Chris Hemsworth motivated again, and then the dramatic stuff that sometimes gets a little too intense with Jane dealing with the cancer, as well as even just like certain moments where Thor's trying to give solace to these kids that we're going to come and rescue you, but they try to find ways to insert all these jokes. And, of course, Russell Crowe's character being Zeus, was made into a complete joke and a reason to get Hemsworth naked in the movie for whatever reason. It just, they try to play up some of the LGBTQ stuff with Korg and with Valkyrie, which is no surprise. But the comedy is just, this is what happens when you let the directors go too far with their style and you deviate from the overall direction of the MCU, and it becomes like, again, I can wait for this in 3 weeks and it's not going to matter. It'll be on Disney Plus. I didn't have to spend money on it because it was not a game changer.
I agree with all the points you're making. I liked Russell Crowe's like cameo. It essentially kind of sets up a future. I really enjoyed Christian Bale's role as the villain. I like the little, the kid aspect of like trying to save them, and then you have Idris Elba's son, being like this visionary who's like keeping them in contact. But I agree with you, there was too much comedy, and it didn't really gel with the storyline because it takes away from it, because like anytime you start to care, it's like, oh, let's put in a joke here. Yeah. Like about the pancakes and getting over each other, like when they go flashback to his and Jane's deterioration of a relationship, where it plays like a like urban romantic comedy or a Seinfeld episode. It's the first film I've seen Natalie Portman in a long time where she actually seems like she's enjoying herself in the role. Chris Hemsworth obviously is enjoying himself. I like the beginning action, but like how you were saying about Taika Waititi's sense of humor, since it involves Guardians of the Galaxy, it felt like it belonged in more of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Right.
And whoa, what happened to Chris Pratt? He looked super skinny in this movie. And I don't know, he seems to have lost a little bit of his charm in that role, because like here, he just seems like thankless and like he can't wait to get out of this movie.
Well, I think at the time when they shot, it was probably before James Gunn got his job back for Guardians.
Oh, okay, because he just is not like happy to be there. I know he's supposed to be annoyed with Thor, but he just seems like really like, I really don't want to be in this movie. I like seeing Tessa Thompson come back, even though they gave her it seemed like they gave her some fight scenes as charity, because really she has nothing to do except be an intermediary between him and Jane.
And then of course they brought back Jamie Alexander as Lady Sif, who's only in it for like a minute.
But she's one of the more memorable parts of the movie.
Yeah. I thought they should have had her and Valkyrie have a romance. Maybe they'll set that up down the line.
I was about to say, you never know. I like the Disney-fication of Asgard a little.
That was fun.
That was cute, but like you said, it's more of a comedy, and it felt more for the younger teenage audience. And which is weird when you start the movie with such a dramatic opening with Christian Bale's character. Like, this is a freaking tragedy. Then it's like, hey, I'm Thor. Look at me doing all these adventures to get over my love. And, it's like, that's a weird contrast.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing, too, is like you go from Thor joking up with the kids that are captured to Christian Bale popping up, scaring them, cutting the guy's head off and throwing it in front of him. I mean, that's just like these sharp turns that don't necessarily work. It's like Kevin Feige was asleep at the wheel this day. And also, the other thing I got to say about Natalie Portman, Taika Waititi, he's out there in the press saying, "Oh yeah, there's this comedic side of her that we want to show off." I didn't see it. I didn't see anything that made me laugh that she did. Maybe like the post-credits scene, but that was it. There's nothing funny about her. It's just Natalie Portman.
I think I agree with you, but I also don't think she got as many moments to be funny as Chris Hemsworth did. Because I mean, the fate of her character, and Jane was never a jokey character. They even had Kat Dennings in the movie, and she doesn't really have anything funny to do. She just really sets up like that story arc, and then we never see her again. And it's like, well, you have a great comedic actress here. You give her nothing to do. And then you have Natalie Portman, and it's a comedy movie, but it was sort of like, we'll give the action and more dramatic stuff to her. And then it's like, were there cut scenes where she got to be jokey? Other than her and Tessa Thompson having girl talk, and it was like Doctor Strange. It wasn't as disappointing, but it's a little disappointing compared to what came before it.
Yeah.
And I think you were correct where I think Taika Waititi was given too much, room to bring in his style instead of like maybe staying a little more in the corridor, which can work for a James Gunn. But with him, obviously, it didn't work. And, like I said, I'd recommend people see it, but it's not going to be on my favorite list. It's sort of like what you said earlier. It's more that middle ground, not like ho-hum Marvel, than like, oh my God, you have to see this one, And, but I will admit, if another Thor movie came out by the same team, I'd probably go back and watch it. Oh, I also have to commend Natalie Portman's trainer because I did see the muscles in the arms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I give it that to her, but like I said, I recommend it. I'm just saying, don't get your hopes up when you watch it, Just take it for what it is. And what would your final review of that movie be?
I say if you have kids, go see it. It's fun. It's enjoyable. If you're a hardcore Marvel fan that's expecting, something that's groundbreaking or it's going to push things forward with the storyline of the MCU, watch it on Disney Plus. It's really not worth paying money to see.
Okay, I say if they make a sequel, have Alexander Skarsgård's character from The Northman be the villain. And I'd be like, then it'll be an action movie. And I mean, you can bring in Anya Taylor-Joy. And,
I'm sure she'll be in the MCU soon enough.
We'll see in what role, but I never complain when she's in a movie. No matter the quality. And that is our review of Thor: Love and Thunder. And that is our show, folks. That ends our business for this episode. But as you know, there is always unfinished business to be done. But before we go, I have to ask you, have you seen 7 Days? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what film would you say the people need to see?
Have you seen the movie Gotcha? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
I agree. And that is the end of this episode, folks. Hope you enjoyed.